Track 2, Certificates and Documents. Using the cross-country you planned for the check ride, the examiner will bring up specifics such as certificates and documents necessary to keep the flight within regulations.
Robin, explain to me some of the limitations that apply to you as a private pilot on today's flight.
Well, one of the biggest limitations is that I can't carry passengers or property for compensation or hire on this flight.
Now, is splitting the cost with passengers considered compensation?
Not necessarily. We can share the costs as long as I don't pay less than a proportional share of the operating expenses of the flight, and only if those expenses involve fuel, oil, airport expenditures, rental fees, the direct costs of the flight itself.
What else can you do as a private pilot?
Well, if it's a passenger-carrying flight sponsored by certain charitable organizations, I can be PIC. Also, certain search and rescue operations allow me to get reimbursed for expenses associated with the flight. Once I log 200 hours of flight time, I can demonstrate an aircraft in flight to a potential buyer as an aircraft salesperson. And once I meet the experience requirements, I can be PIC of an aircraft towing a glider.
Okay. Could I use this flight to get to a business meeting at the destination?
Yes, I can be pilot in command since it would be incidental to the business, and I'm not carrying passengers or property for compensation, but I couldn't charge for someone to sit in the seat next to me.
Okay, let's talk about the airplane we'll be flying today. What category aircraft will we be in?
We'll be flying an airplane. A category is a broad classification of aircraft, like airplane, rotorcraft, glider, and lighter than air.
What class and type of airplane is it?
We're going to use a single-engine land airplane, a Cessna 152. Class is a further classification within a category having similar operating characteristics. Examples include single-engine land or multi-engine land. Type is a specific make and basic model of aircraft, such as Cessna 150 or Boeing 737.
Can you, as a private pilot with a single-engine land on your certificate, fly any single-engine land aircraft?
Yes, as long as it weighs less than 12,500 pounds. For something bigger, I'd need a type rating. But in order to fly high-altitude, high-performance, complex or conventional gear airplanes, I'll need some additional training and an instructor endorsement in my logbook.
How will you know if the airplane you want to fly is a high-performance or complex aircraft?
Well, let's see. If it has an engine that is more than 200 horsepower, like a Piper Seneca 2, it's a high-performance airplane. If it has a retractable landing gear, flaps, and a controllable pitch propeller, like a Cessna 182RG, then it's a complex airplane.
That's correct. Let's talk about what you'll need to do to stay current as a private pilot. What are the requirements?
First of all, I need to take a flight review every 2 years in an airplane with an instructor who endorses my logbook, certifying I satisfactorily completed the review. Second, every 90 days, I need to make 3 takeoffs and landings as the sole manipulator of the airplane. Third, if the aircraft is a tail dragger, or I'm planning on flying at night with passengers, the landings must be made to a full stop.
You've mentioned your logbook a couple of times. Is it required?
Well, all pilots use them as a way to organize and document flight time. You could use a different method, but I think most opt for logbooks. Either way, you must be able to prove training and experience requirements have been met.
Let's talk about you, the pilot, for the moment. What class medical do you need to exercise the privileges of a private pilot certificate?
I need a third-class medical.
How long is it valid?
It expires at the end of the 36th month after the month of the date of the examination because I'm under 40. If I were older than 40, it would expire at the end of the 24th month.
Okay, let's move on. What documents are required on board the aircraft prior to today's flight?
4 documents. I use the acronym AERO to remember them. A stands for Airworthiness Certificate, R stands for Registration Certificate, O for Owner's Manual or Operating Limitations, and the W is Weight and Balance.
Those memory joggers, they do the trick, don't they?
Can't live without them.
What is the Airworthiness Certificate and how long does it remain valid?
It's issued by the FAA once the aircraft has been inspected and confirmed it meets all the regulatory requirements. It's valid for as long as the aircraft receives the required maintenance and is properly registered. The aircraft must also meet the requirements of the original type certificate.
Okay, where is the Airworthiness Certificate usually kept in the aircraft?
It needs to be visible to passengers or crew when the aircraft is operated. In the airplane we're flying today, it's in a plastic envelope taped to the left side of the fuselage above the pilot's ears.
What about inspections for this aircraft? How many must occur and when?
There's an annual inspection every 12 months, which is required for all airplanes, as well as a 100-hour inspection, required because this airplane is used for flight instruction. 100 hours are required for flights that are for hire.
Who's responsible for ensuring the aircraft is maintained and in an airworthy condition?
The owner or operator.
Okay, where's the weight and balance data for your aircraft, and how can I tell if it's correct?
It's normally in the Pilot Operating Handbook or Airplane Flight Manual. It's updated whenever equipment is added or removed from the aircraft, and you should always use the most recent data.
How can you determine if an aircraft has all the required placards on board?
The Pilot Operating Handbook or Type Certificate datasheet will list the required placards.
What if you have inoperable or broken equipment on the aircraft? Can you conduct flight operations?
Yes, under some specific conditions, like a minimum equipment list, when the inoperable instruments or equipment aren't essential for safe flight.
What is a minimum equipment list?
The MEL is an FAA-approved list of equipment and instruments for a specific aircraft that spells out whether a flight can legally be made with something on board that isn't working. It's not something to be used in flight. It's a reference for pilots on the ground, deciding whether they can make a flight with some piece of equipment not working in the aircraft.
Do all airplanes have an MEL?
No, the FAA considers the MEL, along with the letter of authorization, to be a supplemental type of certificate. The aircraft owner can request these. The LOA has to be on the board of aircraft for the MEL to be valid, and both documents apply only to that specific airplane model and tail number.
What would you do if you found something inop or inoperable on your pre-flight inspection and the airplane you were flying didn't have an MEL?
Well, if I find inoperative equipment during my pre-flight inspection or prior to departure, I must cancel the flight, get the item fixed prior to the flight, or defer maintenance on the item. First, I determine if the inop component is required by regulation as part of DAE VFR equipment, if an airworthiness directive requires it, or if it is specifically required for a certain operation. If none of those apply, then it must be deactivated or removed. In either case, it must be placarded inoperative. If I decide to defer maintenance, it's my responsibility as PIC to ensure a safe flight can still be made.
Robin, a couple more questions on aircraft maintenance requirements, and then we're going to move on. What are airworthiness directives?
Okay, an AD is what the FAA uses to notify aircraft owners and others of possible unsafe conditions due to design defects, maintenance, or other causes. They also specify the conditions under which the airplane may continue to be operated.
Do you have to get these done, or are they just recommendations?
These are regulatory, so compliance is mandatory. The owner or operator of the aircraft is responsible for getting these done.
When might you run into a special flight permit?
These are issued for an aircraft that might not meet airworthiness requirements, but is capable of safe flight. I might see this when I have to fly an aircraft to a base where repairs and maintenance are performed. I could also use these when delivering or exporting an aircraft, flight testing new production aircraft, evacuating aircraft from areas of pending danger, or conducting customer demo flights in new production aircraft that have passed flight tests.
Good job, Robin. Let's move on right now and talk about weather.
Robin is starting out strong with her demonstrated understanding of certificate and document requirements. She also needs to know where to find the required maintenance and equipment inspections in the aircraft and engine logbooks for the check ride airplane. These include the annual inspection, 100-hour inspection, ELT inspection, and battery expiration date, transponder certification, and compliance with ADs. The logbooks for rental aircraft are often kept in the maintenance hangar. Ask your flight instructor to show you where everything is before you meet with the examiner, or how to handle these details if the check ride will take place at a different airport.